Hello guys, welcome to this new section on Blender Freeform, where I pretty much show you how you can use creative, exciting freeform modeling inside of Blender to supercharge your designs. So essentially guys, I think one of the biggest problems with Blender is not Blender itself, but the users. I think a lot of people go into Blender and without having used the CAD program, they start using Blender as a CAD program. And so they have to come up with all sorts of workarounds. So, once again guys, I'm not officially against Booleans or anything like that. I think Booleans are fine, but I think whenever you try and Boolean with polygons and you try to have fillets, you're working against the grain and you're not going to get as good of a result as just using a CAD program such as Moai, Fusion, Plasticity, Shaper, or what have you. I think when you work with Blender, you should treat it like a polygon program. And if you really want the precision of CAD, you should just use CAD because you're never going to get as nice fillets with polygons as you can with CAD. It just doesn't make sense. So here we have a default scene. I'm going to select these things. I'm going to left click, hold shift, left click X, and we're going to delete that. I also just don't like the 3D cursor, so we're going to get rid of that as well. We don't really need the floor. We don't really need the Y-axis as well. I prefer to work on the X-axis like so. All right, guys. So what a lot of people will do is they will do something. They will start with a cube or a cylinder or a sphere. They will do a bunch of Boolean operations and they will just apply bevel. So here I'm going to teach you how you can do Angular Freeform in Blender. Essentially what we're going to do is just, extrude that, kind of move that up, select this, move this down, move that down, select this. Now it is okay to use some bevel. So when I say I'm against bevel, I'm mostly referring to things like, or how Blender users try and use Blender like a CAD program. They will select this, for example. They will say, okay, you press Control B, default hotkey, you press S to increase segments, right? A to go back to that, and they will just do this right here. And so what you get right now is a mesh that can't really be subdivided anymore, because if you try and press Control 3, you're going to get that right there. So you just automatically lost one of the best benefits of working with polygons, which is subdivision. So then, let me just undo that. So, they will bevel this right here, and then, they will Alt and left click to loop this, and they will bevel that right there. Okay, and then we'll select this and bevel that, or perhaps let's bevel this one a little bit differently, right? So the bevel like that, and then we can select this as well. We can either do this manually by just Shift Alt to add to this gradually. All right. So we can just kind of Shift Alt our way around this. All right. And so then you can even bevel this like so. Now, of course, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, you can definitely fool someone into thinking you made this with a CAD program. But the thing is, guys, this kind of thing is just much easier with CAD. And so it's just much easier to just continue to Boolean this apart, have all sorts of nice fillets. But you can see essentially what I've done here, guys, is that I've used the CAD workflow, except I've used it with Blender. And so if this is what you do, guys, I'm not saying you're completely wrong. I never want to say things like you're doing something completely wrong. But I think a lot of beginners just do this and they think this is what Blender is for. And, just doing this kind of thing like that, they don't realize this will be much easier to do with CAD. So what I'm saying is that let's use Blender for what it can excel at, which is subdivision and lots of freeform shapes that you can't quite get with CAD. And so another thing that Blender users like to do is, of course, here I'm using Blender at a very basic level, guys. Obviously, there's lots of add-ons which can greatly speed up the Boolean process. Here I'm just doing things at, let's say just using Blender for the first time. How can you do a basic Boolean? But just keep in mind there's things like hard ops and box cutter, which allow you just to kind of click on a surface and cut away parts that you want. But I'm just giving you like a very quick introduction to Blender here. All right. So for example, I will select this and I will apply a Boolean modifier, and I will, it's set to difference. I will use the eyedropper tool to select this. I can then isolate that. We've got that. I'm going to Shift D, right click to move back to original position, and I'm going to switch this to intersect. All right. At this point, I can select both of these and press Control A, or maybe you do it one at a time, Control A, delete that. And so what we now have, guys, is we have this nice cut, this nice Boolean, which separates these. So what Blender users are then accustomed to doing is to applying bevel. And you get this bevel, and we can increase the segments, and we can increase the amount. Okay, so our first problem is that it kind of doesn't go beyond a certain level because we have like a limit, so we can turn that off. Or there's something blocking it. Let's see. I think it's clamp. Okay, so okay, we should have a limit that is angle. All right. So, when you try and achieve large fillets, you start getting all sorts of shading problems, which of course you need to work out. I mean, you see, it's not too bad, but still, you can get much larger fillets with a CAD program much easier. Now, how would you fix this real quick? Well, what I would do is just going to turn off bevel. And so I press tab. Okay, so obviously, I think two vertices close together is causing this. We can, for example, press A to select everything. Press M, use by distance to merge this. Open this up, and perhaps just kind of increase this. Okay. As you can see, that kind of solved it. Kind of a quick fix. So those kinds of problems can be solved, guys, but it can also introduce new problems like this. Another way to fix that is up here. You want to turn on auto merge vertices, and so I kind of press tab. See, when we have this off right here, then when we're in edit mode, we don't see the bevel. When we press tab, go into object mode, we see it. So where the problem is, where the bevel is causing the problem. So like I know the problem right this, so probably this is causing the problem. So I'm going to press GG, and because we have auto merge on, it's going to automatically merge those vertices. As you can see, that fixed the problem, right? So we've got 0.04. I'm going to select this other object. We're also going to apply bevel on this, 0.04. And we're going to turn off the clamp overlap and increase the segments. Okay, there's looks like some problems here. Let's see. Now, once again, a little bit of GG. And probably a little bit of GG here as well. And probably a little bit of GG here as well. So as you can see, guys, if we turn off the edged faces, as you can see, it definitely is a workflow, but I just feel that doing this, I just wanted to kind of give you a smaller rant on why I think a lot of Blender users are kind of using Blender in the wrong way. I mean, this is possible, guys, but this would just be much easier, much faster, and just much more clean and accurate using CAD. So now that that rant is out of the way, how can we, use Blender subdivision to achieve a more powerful, unique result? So what I would do is use this method, which I like to call Angular Freeform. So essentially, and another thing, guys, is that another thing that I think Blender users do wrong is that, for example, they take this object and they apply bevel. And once again, guys, I'm not trying to dogpile on Blender users. Obviously, if you bought this course, I'm happy. But what I'm just saying is that when you go into a program without having anybody kind of guide you, you just kind of start to figure things out. And a lot of times the results don't look aesthetically pleasing. And so I'm kind of going in here and saying, okay, guys, this is why the results aren't looking that great. So one big problem is making things too sharp. So like we get this right here. Let me, decrease that. All right. And so let's do like 0.01. All right. So the problem now is that this object looks pretty bad, I think, because it just looks way too sharp. And I think these objects look way too sharp. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from using the bevel modifier. You can see what it's achieving here. So it's kind of just, it's making it look a little bit better because what the bevel does here, especially if we shade smooth and perhaps apply weighted normals on top and use normals here as well. You can see how that modifier really improves the flat surfaces. So the bevel modifier is doing some good things. It's adding a nice little bevel to this, which as you can see kind of helps to catch the highlights here. You can see that the bevel is kind of catching those nice highlights, making it look a little bit better, but I think the object still looks very boring here. And the way that I would spice this object up is that I will apply a subdivision, let's say, and I will apply, let's say, 2 levels, and I will just have it be simple. Turn off optimal display, which gives us this, and then another one with the Catmull-Clark method. And so what this does, guys, is that it sharpens things up, but it gives us those nice smooth shapes. You can see how kind of similar it is to this one right here on the left. If we compare that, you can see it is similar to that, but we don't have to, it's still a very clean mesh, guys. Look at the difference between this mesh. This mesh is still very easy to create freeform shapes with. Sometimes what I like to do is, so if I turn both of these off, you can see it's still very simple at its base level, and it's still very easy to do things like change this around, press tab, all right. So as you can see, this gives us something that I think works a lot better with polygons. Do that, a little bit of GG that, now we've got this shape, we can select this, we can kind of scale that. So as you can see, this still keeps the topology very clean, and it just gives us, it's a way I think that takes advantage of polygons and subdivision much better than any of these methods. Well, this method here doesn't even do subdivision. This method also, where it's just way too sharp here. I mean, I guess you can look at bevel as a type of subdivision. Some people look at this and say, well, this method is inefficient, right? Look at how it's adding all these edges. That's completely unnecessary. Whereas the bevel modifier is so much more efficient because it just adds them right here. But what they're missing is that there's still lots of things, there's still lots of faces and edges being added here. And it's not, the subdivision may be a little bit less efficient, but I think it just takes advantage of polygons a lot better here. And ultimately, the goal with this course is not supreme efficiency, but aesthetics and opening up new modeling styles for you. But okay, let's say that we make the bevel a little bit, even like this, you can see it's still just way too angular. And I just feel it's very difficult to get a good design when everything is so blocky like this. Whereas this right here, all the nice little curves really just, I think, make this object look more pleasing. If you want it to be a little bit sharper, you can increase the levels here to 3, for example, sharpen that up. You can even keep things, for example, you keep it, for example, 0 in the viewport, and perhaps this one as well. And then, you keep things nice and efficient that way. And then at render time, it will subdivide. So you can also do that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and do some experimentation with this. So, we can very easily GG that, and we can get all sorts of really cool shapes happening just kind of automatically, just like with very little serious effort. So this is a fantastic method, I feel, for beginners. I can select this, for example, Shift D to kind of duplicate that, right click to move back to the original position, and then P to separate that. I will select this new object. It keeps the same modifiers, which I like. We can then mirror that. We're going to move that below using this. All right. So I'm just going to, let's say A, or go into edge level, A, deselect that, extrude, right click. Actually, let's just select everything, and let's just do a small little inset here. I mean, extrude, and kind of move this like so. So let's say we're creating some sort of mechanical toes or mechanical foot, for example, right? So we kind of got that. I insert this. Sometimes I like to extrude, right click to move back to the original position. Just kind of move it out myself. All right, let's kind of scale that on Y and press 0 to snap this. All right. And let's GG that. So, I mean, you get these really nice results, guys, with just like very minimum effort. Like you're still dealing with super basic objects, yet the results I think are very nice. And so now with just a little bit of movement, you're just able to get very nice results happening here. All right, we're going to apply mirror on this as well. All right, so like right away we have this nice kind of seam line down the middle caused by this. So we may need to select that and kind of move that. All right. Not sure if I like that. We can easily move that. So as you can see, guys, you just get very nice results with very little effort. And so this is a fantastic new way for beginners to start experimenting in their design journey. We can even turn off the x-axis and, we can just keep looking at this. Now, one bad method about this is that we can't really use circular shapes until the end because they're just going to become angular. For example, I can select this, hold Control left click here, Shift D right click, P, all right, select the new object, Tab, A, extrude a little bit here, then move it myself, all right. GG, maybe remove Control X to remove some of that. Set flow, or yeah, right here. I've got that set to Control Shift S, pretty much using some of that 3ds Max functionality inspired. So, you just get these very nice shapes very easily with almost no effort. So I can press N just to show you we've got loop tools, default. I don't know, it comes with Blender. We can use things like flatten, for example. It doesn't quite work well here, but we can use G-stretch by selecting this and then G-stretch to flatten things out. Sometimes just kind of subtle changes here to kind of stress this. Just kind of moving things like that opens up so many possibilities for you. Like just cool shapes are opening up to you, and all you got to do is embrace them. And when you do have weirdness happening, there's a little bit of weirdness. What I like to do is just Shift D to copy the mirror modifier, Control A to apply the first one. Just have to make sure your mouse is over here. All right, now I can, for example, select this and then G-stretch. There we go. So sometimes just applying the mirror is just a very, very good method. That's all you need. Same thing for this, a little bit of G-stretch. There we go. So just get these very nice freeform shapes, guys. I'm not going to start to add any further detail. Let's just work with this. But, we can do certain things. We can, for example, go in here, kind of cut this out. And so I did, 1, 2, 3 cuts here, and I'll do 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. So now if we just delete this vertex, we've got this. I can go into edge level, hold down Alt to loop this. Let's see here. All right, we can press F just to, that's my hotkey for new face from edges. We've also got Alt F for fill. So then I can just use the knife tool, let's say, to do that. And perhaps do a little bit of GG right here. So we do have n-gons here, an n-gon right there. And sometimes they need to be fixed up a little bit with a little bit of knife action. But once you do that, you now have this kind of nice cutaway effect right here. So you can really just do simple things like that to make your design much more interesting. You know, that really opens up some nice possibilities. As you can see, sometimes you get some messy things happening like this, for example, but you just kind of keep going at it and you will eventually get some nice results. All right, we can very easily do things like, well, we don't really need to use the knife tool in this case. We could have just slid that vertex, but you know, it's up to you guys. You don't have to use the same tool all the time. You can try using, I really like using the knife tool, the cut tool in 3ds Max, the knife tool in Blender. So sometimes I just prefer using that instead of other methods. Let's do something about this here. So you can left click on the face, hold down Control Shift to select another one, kind of select everything around it and between. All right, we got that happening. Kind of move that. We can try using circle, you know, not to get a perfect circle, but just to get more interesting things happening here. Okay, maybe a little bit of flatten here. Okay, so maybe that didn't work out so well, but it's still a work kind of experiment just to see what kind of things you can do here. And I can select this G stretch, select that G stretch, do a quick inset here. Let me just do a little bit of GG. I like to just kind of straighten things out like this. GG, GG. Do a little bit of a extruded and scale. You know, we can integrate some sort of piping detail as well. So once again, Shift T, Control A on the mirror. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to Shift D, right click, P. Right, now for this object, we can actually turn off the first subdivision. And we can just A, use circle, and just do that. Now there are of course better ways to add pipes in Blender, but I just prefer to use this for a very quick result. And perhaps insert a loop through there. And then Shift D, right click, P. All right, select the new object, extrude that. At this point, you can start experimenting with materials. So let's go into our materials. Once again, I just pretty much use very basic materials here, guys. We're just going to go into viewport display. We're just going to change this one to a darker one. We're just going to go ahead and select this, X that, new. All right, we'll call this red. All right, we got the wrong one here. Let's give this one red. Okay. We'll give this one a dark gray. All right, so you can see we're setting up different materials here already. So, you know, guys, this is just like a basic mech foot, mech leg. You can see we're already achieving some nice things here just with this very basic result. So definitely, I think you should play around with this method. And you can definitely get some very nice results very quickly here. Control plus to grow your selection. Shift D, right click. P. All right, sometimes you get a little bit of a funky extrude. All right, let's flatten that out as well. I'm going to activate X-ray mode, which is right here. I've got that set to Alt-X, just like in 3ds Max. And so you need to do this to be able to select objects on both sides. All right, guys, so as you can see, we're just getting this nice progress. So in future videos, I will show you kind of a more complex method working with loops. But for beginners, before we get into the madness of working with loops, this is just a very good way to get a nice, simple introduction. And even though this is simple, guys, it can be very effective. You can combine this very easily with the future methods I'm going to show you. Like right here, I'm gonna cut, and I'm just going to use G-stretch on that to get this. I probably can remove this as well. But I'm going to keep that for now, just because we have one more additional edge we can use to further define the shape. You can use set flow on this as well. So like right now, if I think this is too boring, I can think, okay, what do I want to do here? Maybe I need to G-stretch on that. Just going to extrude that. That was a misclick, that menu that came up. But you notice just by extruding, kind of moving this, we just get these very nice shapes, guys, that you just can't quite get if you just use Booleans. Like shapes like this are even more difficult to get in ZBrush or CAD or using other programs, just because, I mean, look at what's happening here. You got all these things kind of going together and just kind of looping together here and working with each other here. So, you know, just getting these kinds of shapes accidentally is just a very powerful weapon in your arsenal of design. And these are things that you can really get much easier with polygons. You know, this right here would require a lot more work to do in CAD or, you know, even ZBrush. You need like very good control of your brush. So what I just want to let you guys know is that when you work with different tool sets, you can design different things. You can accidentally design different things as well, because it's just more conducive to that kind of thing. Like with polygons, being able to select anything here, being able to just inset or extrude it, and just being able to move it, and just being able to rotate it, and just being able to scale this, it just opens up the way to lots of results that are just unexpected and really give you some nice shapes that are more difficult to achieve with other modeling styles. Now, obviously, they're not all winners. I think this one in the front looks a lot better than this, but you never know. You can very easily just do maybe a little bit of flatten on this, maybe just a little bit of GG, and that detail which initially looked bizarre. Okay, let's see what's happening here. So that detail that initially looked bizarre, you can turn it into something workable here by just continuing to. It's almost like it is a form of sculpting, but it's not sculpting with a brush. It's more like sculpting with a mouse. But it is a form of sculpting. It's just you're sculpting at a much more basic level. Instead of working with like thousands or millions of points, you're just working with a handful. But just the way all these things interact together and these lines flow, you can come up with some very interesting results that way. You know, like this right here. I'm going to just separate that. And this one I will give, let's say, a dark gray material. So this could be like some sort of, I don't know, armored kneecap detail. All right. Probably do want to cap the back of this just because one thing that makes designs like more interesting is when things capture highlights. You can see because I just kind of ripped this off here. In fact, at this point, it may be a good idea to center that. So we can go to Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry. That's going to move the origin right here. And you can actually see what it kind of ruins the symmetry because what's actually happening here, if that was confusing, is that it's moving the origin not in the middle where we expect it to be, but like right here, which means when you apply mirror now, it's going to be applied slightly on the right, not in the middle as you expect. So the solution for that is to Shift D, Control A. Now we've got this. Now when we do origin to geometry, now it's in the center as you expect. And so when you simply detach things like this, you get this kind of hole right here. And so there's nothing happening here to capture the highlight, which means you just get this complete awkward transition right here. So in order to stop that, we're going to just Alt and left click. We're going to F. We're going to use perhaps, I like to use knife for this. And just do a little bit of quick knife action to get that. So as you notice now on this object, we're getting a nice highlight here. I'm going to apply smooth at the end, but you can see we're getting these nice shadows happening here. And we're going to do the same for this one. So once again, Shift D, Control A. We're going to use F. We're going to knife that across. All right. We can do a little bit of making things more interesting here. So just open up these really nice possibilities. So you know, it's not too angular, it's not too smooth. What you can always do is you can always turn off this one, for example, and you can kind of, you know, now we've transformed the object from the Angular freeform to a more smooth freeform. So just by turning this modifier on and off, we can actually modify how the object looks. So if you're done working with this, for example, you can treat this as like a base mesh. And when you're ready to start working with some loops and some more advanced details and to start introducing some more curves into here, you can simply just turn that off right there. And now you can do a different workflow where you start using loops, for example, and just start getting more crazy organic shapes. What you can also do is, if this is too angular, you can simply go in here and change this to 1, for example, and that will kind of smooth things out as well. So we're going to activate that, but we're going to change that to 1 just to kind of smoothen things out right here. All right, let me just expand this wire a little bit here. All right. And, we can maybe add some sort of calf detail here. Shift D, Control A. Straighten. Shift D, right click, P. Change the material. So when you extrude, it takes care of both sides for you, so you don't have to worry about this being a hole, for example. But like now we've got this detail that can serve both as a calf as well as a way to like capture this pipe right here. And sometimes you can actually insert a loop just to sharpen things up. Like right here, I think it's way too. Actually, we can go back to using 2 for now. All right. So if you think this is just, kind of awkward, you can always go in here and add a basic loop here just to sharpen things up. And this just opens up a lot of nice possibilities for you. We can always go in here. So you can I prefer using the knife tool. You can also select 2 vertices and simply press J to connect them as well. Once again, if I don't like this little point right here, Shift D, Control A, and then I can. Okay, so we are getting this clipping, but remember, it's not something we have to solve automatically. We can try and create a solution like this. For example, we can have these objects work together, and so that now we kind of have this being captured. All right, now I can see how it's kind of working together with this. So you're just kind of gradually sculpting. Think of it as, sculpting with vertices. All right, guys, so this method is really going to help you out. As you can see, you can get some really nice things this way. And I do think it's a method that just kind of works more naturally with polygons as opposed to trying to, kind of force a CAD workflow or making things just way too unnecessarily sharp for some reason. I think with this method, you just get a result that looks a lot better. It's just more fun to work with, just creates more aesthetically pleasing results as well. And so that concludes this video. Thank you for watching and take care.